the water's fine, homie, jump into the deep end. Sow it, you will reap it. We talking how to start it, how to grow it, how to keep it. Take a deep breath. You are now rocking.
Hi, Sel. Welcome to Founder Secrets.
Hi, Taylor. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So, we talk, Flavie and I on this podcast talk a lot about communities. We talk about EO and YPO, and you're the current chapter or incoming, I guess it's almost coming up, chapter president of EO New York. And you also have, your latest business is kind of building a community. And when we talk about entrepreneur communities and communities of kind of like-minded people, what made you want to start another community? And also, how do you feel about this kind of explosion of communities for all these different areas?
Yeah. So when I came to New York, I was looking for a new business to start. And the first thing I wanted to do was look at a specific business model. So I wanted to do a different business model than I'd ever done before. And having been in a lot of membership, like members of things like EO and Collective 54 and Hey Mama and Business Chicks, a whole lot of different ones, I had a good understanding of the member experience. And then being on the EO board sort of gave me some understanding of what it's like on the other side. Even though EO is a not-for-profit, it's still all the same challenges building a community. And so firstly was that I wanted to do that business model, and also because I know how much value that I have got from every community that I've been involved in. In fact, it's the communities like EO that have actually contributed the most to my journey and success, if you want to call it that. So I know how valuable they are. And I also think that we've got so much information now, and we're also, as we hear all the time, even though we're more connected, we're actually quite disconnected. And I feel like if you can bring people together that are the same tribe as you and talk about specific things and connect, not only is it good for you as a human and for your heart and your mental health, but I think it gives us an opportunity to cut out all the noise and focus in on what we really need help with or what we really need to discuss. So I just love the whole concept. I love the business model. I'm really excited to see the process of building it. And I think it's cool.
So tell the kind of listeners what is the community like? Who are you focusing it on, and how are you getting it off the ground? Because kind of starting these is a big challenge.
Real quick, I wanna just real quick go over those ones because I didn't get it. So EO, Entrepreneurial Organization, is one. You mentioned Collective 54.
Yeah, that's for professional services businesses or owners of professional services. Then
what are the others?
Hey Mama. Hey Mama is for women in business. So that's American. Business Chicks, that's an Australian community for women. Oh. What else did I say? That's what I said.
That's cool. Hey Mama, it's kind of interesting.
Yeah, that's
it. So what, when you say you've gotten so much value from each of these, what tangible value would you say you've gotten from each of, say, these three? Yeah.
So Business Chicks was probably the first main one that I joined. Oh, actually, there's another one in Australia, Queensland Leaders, that we're a part of too. And Business Chicks would be the network of other women in business, also in employees of other organisations, and they would have amazing speakers and amazing opportunities to connect. And I'm close friends with women that I met 10 years ago through Business Chicks, and still do business with and are great friends with. So that sort of started me connecting. As a business owner on my own, I needed a network. So that sort of was really important. Collective 54 has been very interesting for me because it's specifically for professional services businesses, and one of my businesses is a consulting firm. And so that's connected me with other owners of similar type businesses with the same challenges. The challenges to grow and scale and exit a service business is unique and challenging. And so we're learning specifically about that. So I really like that because it's so specific to my area. Hey Mama is other women that have children that are trying to kill it in their career. And, you know, women that have got children or having children, you know, there's a whole extra challenge of having kids and growing businesses or growing your career. And so that support is really important to be able to reach out and share. I'm feeling like this, or am I a bad mum for doing this? So as well as, you know, supporting each other's businesses. And then EO, I mean, I've gone into business with other EOers. It assisted me significantly in being able to find a community when I moved to New York. I didn't know anyone when I came here. So to slip into the EO community was massive. Most of my closest friends are EOers, and that has enhanced every area of my life, which is why I'm so committed to it and happy to do as much as I can for the organization.
And you were involved in EO before you moved here. You were involved in Australia and transitioned, right?
Yeah. So I joined EO Brisbane 10 years ago, and then I transferred over to EO New York at the end of 2019. So I spent time on the board in Brisbane. I was the incoming president, but then I moved over here and now fulfilling that role for the New York chapter, which is humbling and amazing.
Awesome. So what made you think there's room for another community? Yeah, to go back to kind of the story of how you decided to start one.
Yeah, look, I know that there are so many entrepreneur communities now, and they're popping up all the time. Same with women in business communities. There's a lot of those too. So my consulting firm specializes in HR, and we do everything from high-level strategic HR through to recruitment, industrial relations, generalist HR. And so in Australia, the purpose of our business was to say, hey, small business owners, you don't need to get an internal HR person. You can bring our business in and we will be able to do all levels for you. And I've had that in August. That business will be 16 years old, and it's still going strong through all the different economic times and the challenges. It's been a really great business to have. And I started that when my first son was 3 months old, and then I've had 2 other sons since then. So they've all been part of the growth of the business. And yeah, so one of the things building a HR company, a consulting firm, is that internal HR people aren't necessarily easily transferred into a consulting environment. And so every HR person I've employed over the last 16 years, I've sort of had to reprogram in a sense, in that I've needed to develop them in the area of their business nous and their commerciality, and understanding how do you influence a CEO? What does a CEO really care about? How do you bring value to the table? And so there's been different skills that I've had to specifically give them that's different to the traditional HR skills that they would get in their studies. And so when I came here, I noticed that businesses brought in internal HR at a lot smaller size than what we would have in Australia. And so there's all these HR departments of one. So companies that have one sole HR person, and they're generalists and they're on their own, and they're trying to do everything with not much guidance and development. They're usually the last ones to get any investment into their training and development. And they're lonely. And so I also have an issue with the fact that HR aren't bringing enough to the table. They're not commercial. They're not strategic. They don't really understand what our CEOs need in this environment. And probably HR is the industry that's been impacted the most in the last 3 years. Everyone turned to HR. Like, how do we deal with this COVID situation? How do we deal with hybrid working? How do we deal with now cannabis and Gen Z and all of these things that are coming up? How do we deal with this stuff? None of us really know. We're just all trying to wing it. So I wanted to create a community specifically for HR departments of one that were in innovative companies or fast growth startups, companies that want to have, best workplaces, but also be innovative in the way that they work. And so this community is very similar to an EO, where they are put into a forum. It's called the HR Link. So they're put into links where they meet once a month, and we can put a problem on the table, like some of the things that I've just mentioned. They have learning every 2 weeks. There's a platform where they can connect with each other, share resources. There's resources there for them. So it's really specific for those HR departments of one, and there isn't anything else out there for them. There's the HR organisation, SHRM, there's lots of learning that they can do on HR, but this is a completely different take on what they really need to be learning in this world.
Real quick, how do we deal with cannabis? I'm sitting here at a place where, I should speak softly, somebody just got fired for smoking weed, which is legal, I think. So how do we deal with that?
I don't know. We're having this conversation a lot. And, where the conversation came up was with a HR person who's in a cannabis company, and they are trying to work out what their cannabis policy is. So these are the things. It's like, well, what do we do with this? And there's more things happening all the time. Our workforce is changing so much, and the general way that we live and our expectations of how we live and how our work plays into that. I mean, I've been talking about the future of work for 10 years, but now we're really going, where are we going? And as CEOs, we need to be able to adapt, and we're looking to our HR person to help us. And if we don't have forward-thinking, innovative, commercially orientated HR people, they're not going to be able to support the CEO the way that they could. So that's what I'm going to change all those HR departments of one. So the CEOs are going, oh my gosh, I never want to get rid of my HR person. They're amazing. So that's what I'm doing.
So 10 years ago, you were talking about the future of AR or HR, and now we're in it. Now we're in the future. Are you seeing that some of the things that you were thinking about 10 years ago are coming true, or is it all brand new, constantly changing?
So here's a funny story. So I was going around Australia doing this talk about the future of HR, future of work. And I did it in Brisbane and Sydney and Melbourne. And anyway, on the last talk that I was doing, I was, doing the talk, and I looked out at the audience, and they were all writing notes, what I was saying. And I thought, shit, they're like really taking on board what I'm saying. And like, I don't know if any of this is right. Like, this is the future of work. I'm just saying, like, this is what it's heading. And so what I did is I went back to the office and I said, okay, we need to test the future of work. So I moved everybody out of the office. We went into co-working spaces, made them hybrid, changed our tech systems, because at that point people were talking about, that's when the big companies were like saying everyone just use whatever desk that you come into, and all of those sorts of things were happening. Anyway, so I did this whole experiment in the business to see whether this future of work was, how it was going to work was going to be great. And it was a disaster. We also tried 4-day work week, all this stuff. It was all a disaster. And I had to bring everyone back and reconfigure. And so then my talk was about, so this is what it looks like. These are the things that if you're going to do this stuff that everyone's saying is really trendy and new and this is the way to go, then think about these things, because these are the challenges. So it was an interesting experience back then. My poor team, they're like guinea pigs. I'd be like, oh, I've got an idea. Let's do this. I'll use you to test that out.
That doesn't sound so bad, trying different days. Let's try working 1 day a week. I bet as a team member, you'd be pretty happy with those experiments.
Well, I really wanted the 4-day work week to work, and it didn't, because of the team, not because of...
How do you know it doesn't work? So how would you test that?
Yeah, so we did it, and in our... And I think that it absolutely depends on the type of business and the industry you're in. So I think my business being HR people was a challenging environment, although they should be able to take this on board because, of what it is. So my goal was that we would go to 4 days, but the ultimate goal was that you're working normal hours on the 4 days. You're not just putting 5 days worth of work or hours into 4 days, so you're working longer hours over 4 days. I'm like, let's use this to become efficient. So we're actually 8 till 6, 4 days a week, not 8 till 10. And the team could not get their head around it. And that takes...
Your team worked 8 a.m. to 10 p.m.? No,
but that's what you would do if you were going to, move your 5 days into 4 days and just do the same amount of hours. And so we wanted normal business hours, but 4 days. And you get there through efficiency and working differently. And that takes time, right? So you're not going to be able to just start on Monday and then suddenly everyone's efficient. But it takes time. And there were people who just really struggled with the concept. Then people had routines and they're like, you know what? I like that I go to the gym at this time on a Friday or whatever. It was really interesting. And in the end, we said, this is your experiment, or it's ours, but what do you want to do? And they all wanted to go back to 5 days. So, yeah, that was a few years ago now. So it was pre-COVID. So I think, doing an experiment like that now would be very different. But at the time and in that industry, it didn't work. But, yeah.
So what do you think the future of work looks like now? What do you, when you go to these speakers and you speak to these folks, what do you tell them?
Well, what we are talking about, and we are saying that HR is not talking about enough, is implementing AI into HR. And so I've just recently put out a blog about this, like what are the 5 simple ways to implement ChatGPT into HR. Recently, there was a large global HR conference that goes for 4 days with so many sessions, and there was like one on AI. And so what we're saying is, and every HR person I speak to is like, you need to get onto this, because this is a way that we can significantly impact businesses and what businesses can achieve. And it should be coming. Like HR should be able to have, be able to contribute to that conversation, because it's about how our people are working, how we structure it, how we do our organizational structuring. So that's the key thing right now and also hybrid is still there's still a lot of companies that want people to come back full time. There's a lot of pushback depending on the sort of generation of the person. So I'm interested to see how that plays out over the next 3 years too.
When I think of HR people, I think of, conservative, not really wanting to change a lot, not wanting to push the envelope. They don't take a lot of risks. Could be fair, could be not. I don't know, but that's what I think of in my head. And do you think that that's part of the kind of challenge with adopting new scary things like AI?
I mean, exactly. And that's why I think my consulting business has been successful, because we would come into a business as their consulting firm and have a completely different approach to how they looked at their HR. And now that's what I'm trying to do with this community, is to say, you're not the police or the counsellor. We're not just about compliance. Like, actually, we need to think about where are our businesses going. Do you know the very first conversation that we have in this group is for the HR person to be able to present on what the company they work for actually does. We're saying you need to know the business first, then your HR, because they don't. I meet so many HR people that don't even really understand how the business works. So these are things that need to be taught, and they need to understand a profit and loss, and why CEOs stressing about this and that, and what cash flow is, and where the industry is trending, and what's that going to mean for the market, and all of these things which HR are not even thinking about, because everywhere's telling them you need to think about performance reviews and onboarding, which you do, but that's standard. There's a whole lot of other area that they need to be exposed to, which is what I'm going to do.
How does how do you build a community like this? How do you get the first 5 into you call them links? How do you get them into these links? Like, how do you get the first 5 or the first 10? I would assume once you have 1,000, then it kind of naturally grows. But how do you get the first few when you don't have a reputation and it's brand new?
Yeah. Can you invite me back when I have 1,000? I will be so happy, because we're right at the beginning of starting. So we're just building our first community now. And I have found it challenging. Well, so it's interesting, because I feel like my network is not as strong here as it is in Australia, but that's probably not right. But one of the things we've got a challenge with is, compared to somewhere like EO or some of the others that I mentioned to you, we are actually the buyer and the user are different. So the CEO or the company is paying for our membership and the HR person is using it. This is not an environment where a HR person would be paying for this themselves. So we're going out to both markets, but they are also wanting different information. So we're focusing on content and connection. So keep like talking to people. I've done a heap of like market research calls with people to give them the idea, explain what it's for, and that's really helped with getting people interested and wanting to talk about joining. So it's a slower burn because there's two markets. So the sales process is longer because if I get in front of the HR person, then I still need to get it through to the CEO. But yeah, content, LinkedIn, friends. Yeah.
By the way, I just noticed you guys use web tailors for the website. Is that right? For the
For What's Next group?
community?
Oh no, for
The
HR.
HR link.
Yeah, that was the website designer. So
They're Romanian. How'd you come across the Romanian crew?
They're from in Israel.
Oh, they're in Israel?
EO referred me. So,
Oh, look at that.
and we use Hivebright as our community platform where everyone sits and can.
What's it called?
Hivebright.
Half Pride?
Hivebright. HIVEBRITE.
Ah, Hivebright.
Yeah.
Got it.
That's
Very
the
cool.
we use. Yeah.
By the way, did you go through like a comparison? I know there's like a number of these communities out there from Circle,
Hampton.
Mighty Networks, Hampton. Yeah, like how did you pick?
So the platforms, yeah, I just did a lot of like calls with them. They took me through it, and then spoke to some people who had used different ones, and I really liked Hivebright. It had everything that I thought that the business would need over the time, as it grows. Because really, I mean, you don't really know because your business is going to tell you where it's going as you go along. But yeah, I chose that one, and I've been really happy with it so far. And I was never going to build my own. I was always going to do a white label. Yeah.
I find, and I think other people struggle in this early choices, like what website to build it in, what tool to use, and I fall victim to getting stuck in those decisions. I'm like, oh my god, if I choose the wrong one, and then end up never starting the thing in the first place.
Yeah.
Sounds like you don't fall in that trap.
Well, I think that I'm not overly analytical, so I tend to make quick decisions with minimal information, which is helpful to get things done, but can result in mistakes later. But that's just sort of how I work. So if I've got a good feel for this, then I'm not going to get a spreadsheet together and compare everything. Like I just am not that way inclined.
So back to HR using AI. It's interesting. You wrote this post. First of all, I'm wondering, are there any specific tools? You recommend ChatGPT, but ChatGPT doesn't know my culture and policies and procedures and manual, right? Or maybe it does, I guess. How would you recommend it? What tool would you use? Would you use ChatGPT, or are there others you'd recommend, and how to implement?
So this is what we're really looking into right now as a focus in our company, and we've had some AI ChatGPT hackathons with the team to like see like what can we use it for, and how can HR people use it, and definitely in preparation of policies, and a lot of the stuff that I've been reading about is that the staff being able to use it instead of having to go to HR. So that's interesting in itself. But there's, we've heard and seen ones around helping with recruitment and assessing resumes, and people have got different views on that. But I think there's going to be more and more and more in this space, in the HR space. More and more is going to come up. Just like when HRIS systems started coming up, there's so many now. So we have just started really talking about this and seeing where's this going to go. But what we found very interesting was at this big global conference that there was no discussion, and talking about HR being sort of risk averse. Certainly, often they will be, oh no, it's going to impact the people. We don't want to lose our people. And it's not necessarily about getting rid of people, but it's looking at how does our businesses run most effectively and efficiently and have people in the right roles where we're getting full leverage and all of those things. So at the moment, we're mainly looking at how HR can be using ChatGPT. rather than how the employees can be using it for HR. But I think that will come on board very quickly. I'm very interested to see what comes
That's
up.
a good point. I see. You're saying how do the employees use it? Because if I'm sitting there and I'm a HR professional that mainly answers questions about various policies and vacations, days, and things like that, and then you think, well, I could just put this in a bot where all employees can just ask AI. That does threaten my job.
I would be terrified.
Well, that's why they need to join the HR link and learn about things that are going to add value to their founder and on making business decisions, rather than just giving information or filling out paperwork. So,
what will bring value? Let's say what brings value is getting this bot that replaces me. Would I then, I guess, would you advise me as an HR person to replace myself and then hope that the CEO is like, oh, now that you replaced yourself and you're so smart, you get a promotion and I'll find you new ways, not fire you. Do you see the dilemma? I guess, yeah. How do you?
So I wouldn't say that someone would say, well, I've just found a bot to replace me, so now what do you want to do with me? I would say, find the bot to replace you so that you can then say to the CEO, now I can help you with this stuff that really matters to you that a bot can't help you with. And so, we are brought into companies all the time that have internal HR because we are strategic and we think commercially and we understand organizational structuring. They need to be learning these things. They need to be stepping up their understanding of business so that they can be adding more value, because these bots are going to come in and take a lot of jobs, not just HR.
Wreak havoc. Can you speak to maybe why'd you move to New York, and what did you see as the biggest kind of contrast between Australia or the business, doing business in Australia? You touched on this a little bit, but doing business here in the US.
Yeah, there's a lot. So I wanted to come here because, as you know, Taylor, I think it's the entrepreneurial playground of the world. And, if you really want to test how good you are, this is the place to come, because I really do believe it's sort of the hardest place. And also this is where dreamers come, and I'm a dreamer. And so I wanted to be around people that have dreams and want to do things that perhaps, like me, people have said you can't do, or you won't be successful. And, we all know it's got an incredible energy and vibe. And, I just wanted to be here. And, but it's very hard to do that when, I was mid-40s with 3 sons and a business. To then come and move to New York it was nearly impossible to do. And I spent 2 years commuting so that, the boys could stay in Australia whilst I spent my time here trying to work out how to do it. And I would basically walk the streets of New York, going into businesses, talking about my consulting business. And people would tell me, we don't need this. You'll never make it here. And then I'd get on the subway and I'd cry all the way home. And then I'd get up the next morning and go out. And I did that for like 2 years. And then I'd fly back to see the boys and do some of my responsibilities with EO and things like that. And I had got to the point where I was like, I just don't think I can make this happen, because not only is there visas, but also like the cost and trying to do a full-blown startup here with limited capital, terrible exchange rates, and, nearly teenage kids that have, got their opinions of what they want to do. So I went back to Australia for the New York summer, and I was using a performance coach who coaches world-class athletes like the surfers and people like that. And I've always looked for sports coaches for business. And because I remember seeing this guy and I said, look, I'm a bizlead. Like, I want you to think of me as a bizlead. Like, I need a team, just like an athlete needs a team of different people around them. So does an entrepreneur. And so I wanted this guy to specifically look at me like an athlete. And so we looked at, mindset and mental capacity and nutrients and all of these things that he would do with athletes. And anyway, that's a whole side story, but it was super interesting. But anyway, I said to him, one of our sessions, I rang him and said, I don't think I'm going to be able to do it. I've just spent 2 years or 18 months and I'm stuck. And he said, so you just need to find another way. And I was like, well, that's what I've been doing for the last 18 months, trying to find another way, and I just can't get it to work. And I'm going to be heartbroken if after all this time away from the kids, that I can't make it work. And he said, you just need to find another way. And then that doesn't work, you find another way, and then you find another way. So I came back after the summer, and I was the crazy woman walking down the streets going, find another way, find another way, find another way. And I persevered, and I got some wins. And then I managed to get the boys over at the end of 2019, and I got them their visas. I settled them in, I got them into school. And the weekend in March, I was like, okay, everyone's in school, I've got everyone organized, now I can go for it. And then that weekend, COVID happened, and the schools got shut down for 18 months. And, seriously. So then I was really starting all over again. But it's a crazy story and adventure.
So did it turn into the dream you thought it would be?
Well, I'll let you know. No, I mean, it's been incredible, like an incredible experience. Like that COVID experience with the boys, we had everyone telling us, you need to come home, it's irresponsible and unsafe, and, New York's over. I mean, New York was never going to be over. And people just like every week, you need to come home, you're doing the wrong thing. And I was like, I spent 2 years away from my son's commuting and all of my money to try and get here. If I go back, I won't get back here. And so I was like, we just need to hang on, guys. We just need to hang on. And we'd have lots of family meetings, and we just pushed through. And then 18 months later, we sort of came out of it, and, the boys were back at school full time. And and then it was sort of like, okay, start again. So, yeah. Amazing learning for them, amazing experience for all of us, the growth, and I'm really proud of them, actually.
Wow. And what did you think? I mean, you touched on how you went door to door and people said you'll never make it. I mean, you're really making New York and Americans sound awful. But what kept you going? And also, what are some other contrasts that you noticed and the differences in the culture?
Yeah, real quick, I'll just mention, I have another Australian friend that tells me how in Australia, people just give you feedback straight, and they'll tell you if you don't like something, where in the US, they sugarcoat it. I'm curious, to Taylor's point, how did you find selling and building a business differently here than there? So
that's really interesting. So in Australia, I would walk out of, prospect meetings and be like, we're not going to get that. We're not going to win that. And then they'd ring like 2 weeks later, a week later, and say, right, I'm ready to start. And you think, oh my gosh, I never expected that. Here, you'd walk out and go, oh, we've won that. They loved it. And then nothing. They would just never call you back. So wouldn't take the call to say, no, I'm not interested, just no. And so that was a big difference. That was very different. The other thing is that everyone here is always late, and we would never be late. So only time that any of my meetings started on time is when I was meeting with an Australian like that. And I would just, I cannot believe people are just late. Like they're just late. Like they walk in at 20 minutes after the meeting started. And it's like, hi, what?
20 minutes?
Sometimes. And it's always blamed on New York City, which,
are you talking about in-person meetings or?
Yeah, in-person meetings. Yeah. Free COVID.
At their office or like a coffee shop.
Yeah, either. Anywhere.
They're always late.
People just show up 20 minutes late.
They're always, late. And it's just like, but everyone was like cool about it. But I mean, it's so different to home. Well, okay, so here's a story for my son who was in grade 1. So he got asked to put his library books in the bin, and we call the bin is the trash. And so he was like, why do they want us to put these in the trash? Like what, in the bin? And so he got up and put the library books in the trash can because they said to put it in the bin. So things like that would happen all the time. These little differences that we would challenge with. Yeah, I've got lots of stories like that.
So one of my buddies lived in Australia for 6 years or 7 years, and he talked about how at least like outside the major cities that they're very far behind, like technologically, that they don't use the latest tools or latest things. Was that your experience, or did he just make that up?
I think it's more behind here.
You think, that Australia is ahead?
They invented Atlassian.
Yeah.
That's
right.
one example.
Yeah, that's one example. Well, what I mean is like what I found interesting here is like the branding and websites is like a very old fashioned a lot of the time. Yep. And I'll send you some examples. And what's the other thing? We were laughing about this the other day, but I've thought things have been behind and like old school here. So, but I mean, my thoughts about that, if that is true, that's been my experience, but not obviously your friends, that we in Australia, we're so far away that for us to have any experiences, we need to travel. Like we need to go places, conferences, see great bands, speakers. Like we get things to Australia, but we're very big travelers. And when I came here, I noticed how many people didn't have a passport or had never traveled outside the country. Like that would be very rare in Australia. And so my view is like we see more of the world, and America might be a bit like, I think we know it all. We don't need to go outside of our amazing country. It's all here. I don't know. I mean, I no disrespect, because I absolutely love it here. So.
Taylor's is the only person that's left Kentucky, so
it's true. I'm the only one
representing the whole state.
I'm the evangelist.
So I'm wondering what makes you so passionate about HR. Not to, I guess, inflict my own opinion, but a lot of people, I guess, don't view HR as exciting, and you seem to. So I'm wondering, like, what do you find exciting about it?
Okay, so the reason I started the business in HR is because I hated HR. So I started out as a recruiter, and back then, many moons ago, it was a very dynamic industry. I don't know whether it's like that now, but it was very dynamic, and it was an industry where you learned everything: hardcore sales, negotiations, budgeting, obviously the craft of recruitment. But it was just it was a great career starter because you learned so many things, and it was very fast paced, long hours. You eat what you kill type environment.
Robert Half Technologies. Robert Half. Do you know Taylor? Robert Half?
Yeah,
like a huge recruiting firm in the U.S.
Yeah, they just told us no.
I became a recruiter, and they for your product.
Yeah.
I applied for them for the most basic entry job, to just cold call people for recruiting, and they rejected me. So I didn't go into recruiting. So carry on with your.
Well, when I then moved into internal HR, I thought I didn't have any HR skills or experience or anything, and so I thought I better get into some HR networking groups and stuff so I can learn how to do this job I've just got. And I was so underwhelmed, and I just found all these people that had no personality and were just boring and employee focused, like not business orientated at all. And I was just like, what is this industry? And so I was in this internal HR role, and it had about 100 staff. I was the first time they'd had a HR person. And mind you, I don't have any qualifications in HR. So I just worked my way through with learning on the job, which I think is the best way to learn. But anyway, this company had like 5 departments with 5 department heads, like, head of customer service, head of sales, whatever. And every employee, their employee experience was dependent on how good a leader the person that ran their department was. So whether they got performance reviews, whether they got good training, what the culture was like. And so my role was to come in and make it more make it the same for everyone. One employee experience for the company, and everyone have the same processes around, how people are onboarded or how they're reviewed, and the leaders trained properly in people leadership, etc. And so when I was doing that, I was like, you know what would these guys do without my role here? Like, they have no idea what they're doing. And I thought, this is just like a whole lot of small businesses. And what do small business owners do? Like, they can't afford recruiters to help them recruit. They don't need an internal HR person, but they've got staff. not one business owner I know in the world would go into business because they want to manage staff. Like, we don't want to manage staff. And so what are they doing? And so it was from that I decided to start the business that would be the outsourced HR department for small to medium and fast growth startups. And my goal, like, I just wanted to grow businesses. And so I used that as my my opportunity. And that's why I went with all my staff. I've completely trained them differently and made them think differently. And so it's not so much that I'm passionate about HR. I'm passionate about the missed opportunity and the fact that HR should be doing such different things in organizations, and they have the reputation they have because that's how they behave, and they shouldn't. Like, it should be a really valuable seat at the table that has significant things to contribute, like our consulting business does to our clients. So it was the whole path of me being in HR was because I hated the industry and didn't get along with the people very well, and now I'm trying to transform it.
All right, one last question from my side is everything you're saying is kind of from the HR person's perspective, right? So it's from, if I'm an HR leader, I take more, if Flavia is the CEO and I take more ownership, how does one handle, maybe Flavia doesn't want a powerful HR person or an empowered HR person or someone who is, wants more and wants to grow within the business. How does, is that true, or is that just in the HR people on the CEO's heads?
So I'm really coming more from I'm coming from the CEO's point of view. So in my consulting firm, we work for the CEO, the founder. So we're not there for the people. We're there the founder says, this is my business goals. And then we look at the people element of the business and advise on what needs to happen for them to achieve their business goals through their people. Just like the finance department would be talking to them how they're going to achieve the business goals with finance. And so the reason that the consulting firm has had to be brought in is because they haven't had HR people that have had that strategic thinking and that ability to be innovative. If that's what a company wants, there's still a need for that because it's still highly administrative. There's still a lot of coordination in HR. It hasn't, especially in small to medium business. You can't afford someone who has high level strategic background like you'd find in a corporate, and that's always also going to do the paperwork. That's, small businesses can't really, that's not smart. But there's a lot of support there for having HR coordinators, HR support, people there to keep those daily things that need to happen in your company to keep the culture and the performance and all of those things happening. That's very critical. I think that a lot of it will be replaced with things that we've been talking about, but there's this massive gap for small businesses and fast growth startups of that higher level thinking when it comes to HR. And I don't believe we necessarily have to only bring in highly paid HR people. We can actually develop these other people to think outside what they consider HR to be now in this world, because it's not the same as it was perhaps when they first started studying or wanted to get into it.
Love it. All right. Well, anything you want to plug or any kind of final things that you want to share, Sel?
Well, I think we've plugged the HR link, which is great. Thank you. And What's Next Group is the consulting firm. What I will say is that my life mantra is no plan B. And I'm a big believer that if you have a safety net, as human beings, we'll take the safety nets when things get really hard. So if we have a no plan B approach of I'm going to achieve what I want to achieve, I may have to take a different path, do something different. But if I'm not going to ever take plan B, you will get so much further than you'll ever think that you could have. And it takes the limits away. And I have had so many people ask me, like, how have you managed to do this at this age and make these changes with the boys and start over? And I just had a dream and went like, no plan B. I'm just going to the boats have been burnt. And I want everyone to know that they can chase their dream. Like, there's no reason why you can't achieve what you want to achieve in your life. No reason. Lots of sacrifices, very hard, but you can do it if you want to.
I love it.
You're an inspiration to all entrepreneurs, Sel. Thank you for sharing that.
Well, thank you for having me.
Amazing.
I love you guys.
Thank you for rocking with the homies. Taylor, Trusty, and Flavio. Seize the day, own it. Until next time, hold it down, hold it down.